Stop for a second and listen. Really listen to whatever is around you right now. The hum of a fridge, the whir of a fan, a car somewhere outside, the faint electrical buzz of the device you're watching this on. Maybe traffic, maybe someone in another room, maybe music you stopped noticing 20 minutes ago. Now ask yourself a strange question. When was the last time you heard nothing at all? Not quiet, not peaceful, not no one talking. Actual silence, the complete absence of sound. If you're like almost everyone alive today, the honest answer is probably never. Most humans on Earth have never experienced true silence, not once in their entire lives. The brain that evolved over 200,000 years to require it has been living for the past century or so in a world that no longer provides it. And scientists are only just beginning to figure out what that does to us. In a small building in Minneapolis, there is a room that holds the Guinness World Record for the quietest place on Earth. It's called an anechoic chamber, and it sits inside a facility called Orfield Laboratories. The room is built from 3-foot-thick acoustic wedges, surrounded by walls of insulated steel and concrete, suspended on vibration-absorbing springs so that not even the rumble of a passing truck can leak in. Inside, the ambient sound level has been measured at -24.9 decibels. The threshold of normal human hearing is 0 decibels. The room is 25 decibels below that. There is, by any conventional measurement, nothing to hear in there. Your kitchen at night, with the fridge humming, measures around 50. A library is closer to 40. The Orfield chamber is so far below the threshold of human hearing that visiting it isn't just quiet. It's an experience your brain has no framework for. People who go inside report a very specific sequence. For the first few seconds, they hear nothing. Then, slowly, they notice things they've never noticed before. They hear themselves breathing. They hear their own heartbeat. After a few minutes, they hear blood moving through their veins. Some people report hearing their eyelids closing when they blink. Some hear their scalp shifting over their skull. Almost no one can stay inside for more than 30 minutes. The longest anyone has lasted is 45. The reason isn't that silence is uncomfortable. It's that, without external sound to orient the brain, people lose their balance. The brain uses ambient sound as a kind of spatial anchor, small reflections off walls, the position of a distant hum, the direction a voice is coming from. When all of that disappears, the body simply stops knowing where it is. Most visitors have to sit down after about 10 minutes. This is the part that should make you pause. What the Orfield chamber reveals isn't that silence is rare. It's that silence is something our brains can't really handle anymore. We've become so adapted to constant ambient sound that its complete absence registers as a kind of crisis. The room isn't doing anything to people. It's just removing something. And we've forgotten what it feels like when that thing is gone. For most of human history, this would have been the opposite of normal. For 200,000 years, the default acoustic environment of a human being was something close to natural silence, broken only by weather, animals, and other humans. The background of life was wind, leaves, rivers, distant calls. The brain that evolved in that environment developed inside a soundscape we no longer live in. And there's growing evidence that it didn't just tolerate silence, it required it. In 2013, a regenerative biologist at Duke University named Imke Kerster was studying how different sounds affect the brains of adult mice. She exposed 4 groups to 4 different conditions: white noise, the calls of baby mice, music, and silence. She used silence as her control. The baseline she expected to do nothing. Her hypothesis was that the social calls of baby mice would stimulate the most brain growth, since those are emotionally meaningful sounds for the species. The results surprised her completely. It wasn't the calls, it wasn't the music, it was the silence. 2 hours of silence a day produced measurable cell growth in the hippocampus, the region of the brain responsible for memory, emotion, and learning. The new cells weren't just present. They were differentiating into functional neurons and integrating into the existing neural networks. Silence wasn't a neutral baseline. Silence was actively building brain tissue. Kirsty's hypothesis, which other researchers have since taken seriously, is that silence forces the brain into a specific kind of alertness. When the auditory cortex has nothing to process, it doesn't shut down. It activates. The brain begins to listen for something. and in doing so, becomes more receptive, more plastic, more capable of forming new connections. Silence is not the absence of input, it is a particular kind of input. One that humans evolved to receive, and one that almost no human alive today gets enough of. If the brain is built to require silence, then a question follows. Where, in the modern world, can you actually find it? This is the question an acoustic ecologist named Gordon Hempton has spent his career trying to answer. Hempton has traveled the world for over 30 years recording natural soundscapes. Along the way, he started measuring how long he could stand in a given location without hearing a single human-made sound. No airplanes overhead, no distant highway, no motor of any kind. Pure natural silence. In the 1980s, when he started, he could find dozens of such places in the continental United States. Locations where you could stand for 15 minutes or longer without the intrusion of any mechanical noise. By the early 2000s, that number had dropped to around a dozen. By 2014, he reported being able to find only 3 places left in the lower 48 states where you could stand for 15 consecutive minutes without hearing a human-generated sound during daylight hours. 3. In a country that covers more than 3 million square miles, there are 3 places where the original acoustic environment of human existence still exists in unbroken form. Hempton designated one of them, a small spot in the Hoh Rain Forest in Olympic National Park, as 1 square inch of silence. He marked it with a small red stone. His argument is simple. If that 1 square inch can remain quiet, then by extension, miles of surrounding wilderness will remain quiet too, since noise travels. It is possibly the most fragile environmental landmark in the country, and it is something the average person living 100 years ago would have considered unremarkable, just the way the world sounded. We have built a world that doesn't sound the way humans evolved to expect. Chronic exposure to ambient noise is associated with elevated stress hormones, sleep disruption, cardiovascular problems, and measurable cognitive impairment in children growing up near airports and highways. The brain doesn't get used to constant low-level noise. It treats it as a low-grade stressor year after year, and the body pays for it in ways we are only beginning to track. But the deeper loss is harder to measure. It isn't just that noise is harmful. It's that the silence we lost might have been doing something for us that we didn't notice until it was gone. The brain, when given silence, begins to grow new tissue. The mind, when given silence, begins to notice things it had stopped noticing. Memory consolidates differently. Attention recovers. Creativity, as anyone who has experienced it knows, tends to arrive in the quiet spaces between activities, in the shower, on a walk, in the gap between waking and sleep. Not because silence creates ideas, but because it lets the ones already inside you finally be heard. There is a possibility, raised by some researchers in this field, that the modern epidemic of attention disorders, anxiety, and difficulty with deep thought is at least partly an acoustic problem. Not because anyone is making us anxious deliberately, but because we have removed something the brain quietly requires and replaced it with something the brain quietly resists. The honest answer to whether humans need silence is that we probably do. Not in the way we need food or sleep or sunlight, but in some related way. As a cognitive nutrient, the brain evolved to expect, and that the modern world has almost entirely erased. Tonight, if you're somewhere indoors, try this. Turn off everything you can. The television, the music, the air conditioner. Sit somewhere quiet for 10 minutes and just listen. You will not hear silence. You'll hear the refrigerator, the clock, the faint hum of electricity in the walls, maybe a car outside, maybe your own pulse. This is what passes for quiet in the world your brain inherited. It is not what your ancestors heard when they sat alone at night. It is not what the brain you carry was designed for. Somewhere in a forest in Washington state, there is a small red stone resting on a moss-covered log. Around it, for a few hundred yards in every direction, the world sounds the way it used to sound. The way it sounded for almost the entire history of our species, before the past 100 years. The strangest thing about that place isn't how rare it is. It's that, only a few generations ago, it wasn't rare at all.